Hello, Darleen. Ken Brodsky here. I am going to submit my 1 hour class video where I will be teaching a class on financial literacy, particularly around introduction to budgeting, which of course is core to financial literacy. I'm going to jump into it, and every now and then I'll break character, if you will, and just sort of raise my hand and speak to you in the camera to let you know if there's some editorial you need to know about what I'm doing and why. So that said, let me jump into it. I will greet the class as they're walking into the room. Everyone, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Handing you each student, please grab a number that I give to you. The numbers are 1 to 3, so 1, 2, or 3. Yep, you'll get those numbers as you walk in. And the idea is that all the 1s will sit with 1s, all the 2s will sit with 2s, all the 3s will sit with 3s. Everyone get together and make your way into the room. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. While you're coming into the room, I will compliment you all that you have been doing a wonderful job in following classroom procedures, particularly around putting your mobile phone in the pockets right here in front of the room and getting yourself set up, having your laptops open and ready, booted up and ready to go, and having your homework assignments all sent to me by the time the class has begun. You've been doing a wonderful job in this, so keep it up. Keep it up. The classroom procedures are there for a reason, to make your lives a whole lot easier, so thanks for that. Terrific. Okay, now that everyone's seated, we'll begin the class with the topic of Introduction to Budgeting. Now that doesn't sound fun, but let's start with a fun game. And that is, imagine this. Imagine you just hit the lottery. Yes, imagine you won the lottery. And I don't mean just a couple of dollars. Imagine you won $27 million in the lottery. Or as so on Austin Powers, $27 million. Yes, $27 million. So let's go around the room and talk about what would we do with $27 million. What would you do with $27 million? Oh, okay. What would you do with $27 million? What would you do? Oh, I'm hearing a lot of things around what you would buy: cars and maybe an airplane, new clothes. Interesting. Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking that question is because, as you see on the slide, Darleen, I would be putting up a slide at this point. As you see on the slide, that was an actual situation where a lottery winner by the name of Michael Smith won $27 million in 2001. Now, $27 million in 2001 is, well, $27 million is a lot of money. $27 million in 2001, so 20 some odd years ago, is a lot of money. So what's interesting is he won $27 million in 2001. Guess how long he had it before he lost it all? 5 years he spent it all. Yep, 5 years he spent it all. $1.6 million on a house, on private tennis court, a golf community that he participated in. Spent another $600,000 on another home. He bought a $1.9 million Lear jet, some racehorses, and a business worth $4.5 million. So he spent $27 million in 5 years. He also bought a Lamborghini Diablo and had $1 million in vehicles parked in front of his house. In 3 months, as a millionaire, he spent $3 million in a month. I mean, that is amazing. So lottery winners, you'll find, are very likely to declare bankruptcy in 3 to 5 years after winning their money. So I'll ask you the question: what percentage do you think of lottery winners end up broke? Throw out a number. What percentage of lottery winners do you think end up broke? 20%, 30%? How's 70%? 70% of lottery winners end up broke. So you might be wondering why we're going through this exercise and this game. It's because you wonder, why do you think this happened? Why do you think it happens that someone wins so much money and can go broke in such a short period of time? Let's go around the room and throw out some suggestions. Raise your hand. Yep. Okay. Great. Exactly. Planning. Another word for planning in financial literacy is budgeting. It's likely these people did not have a good plan or a good budget put in place. Maybe another word for budget is a spending plan. It's how you plan to spend your money. So let's talk about that today. Let's talk about the importance of budgeting, and let's talk about what today's objectives are. So on the slide here, you can see the objectives for today, what we expect that you'll learn today. You'll be able to understand what a budget is, why it's important as a financial planning tool. You're going to prepare your own budget using a template that I will provide to you. You'll understand some definitions about basic financial terms that you need to use when you're preparing a budget. In fact, we'll play a game at the end of class. And I want you to become aware of several free web-based apps that you can use to help you to budget. In fact, that will be your homework. So those are the 5 things that we're going to accomplish today, and I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get there together. So let's start. Let's start with the basic question. What is a budget? What do you think a budget is? Hands, any hands raised? Okay. Well, a budget is an estimate of income and expenses over a certain period of time. Income and expenses. Jot that down. It'll be on the test. In other words, it's an understanding of where money comes from and where money goes. Where does your money come from and where does your money go? So the first step in building a budget is remembering that money can move 2 ways. It can come into your wallet. So the way to think of it is into your wallet, income to your wallet. And then it can go out of your wallet, exits your wallet. So think of expenses, exits your wallet. So income comes into your wallet, expenses go out of your wallet. Those are the 2 ways that you have to manage a budget. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how income comes in, what that means, and how expenses go out and what that means and how that typically happens. And you'll find you're already doing it in some way, shape, or form. So your parents certainly, but you may just not know what it's called. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about first income, money coming in to your life, okay? What do you think is considered income? What are some examples of income? Let's go around the room and ask. Hands raised. Great. Well, I heard several. One was salary. So salary is what you get paid on a regular basis for the work that you do. If you're, let's say, cutting a lawn, mowing a lawn every weekend, or walking a dog for a neighbor, that could be a salary that you're getting on a regular basis. Second is an allowance. Maybe some of you get an allowance for chores you do around the house, things like that. That's income. An allowance is income. It's a gift. Another one is a gift. Another example of income. Maybe during your birthday or a holiday, you'll get some, let's say, a gift card or a check or cash. That's income. And then earnings on investments. We'll talk about that in a later chapter, but think of it as money making money, money that's in the bank you'll be earning interest on. So there's 4 different examples there of income coming in. Let's talk about the 2 terms that you should know as part of income coming in. One is gross pay versus net pay. So let's ask the question, what is gross pay versus net pay? Anyone ever hear those terms before? Just show of hands. Anyone hear those terms? Okay. Anyone want to take a guess as to what gross pay is? Yep. Gross pay is the total of your salary before taxes and deductions. gross. So that's the money that you get in your paycheck before you have to start giving up money for taxes and deductions. We talked about taxes conceptually last week, so I asked you to pull on up to remember that. Sorry, Darlene, the screensaver kicked in. So, gross pay. And the way to think of that gross pay, or the way to remember it is, at least the way I remembered it as I was a kid, I thought, wow, it's gross how much money is taken out of my paycheck for taxes. Now, you can think of your own way to remember it, but that's the way I remembered it. So gross is before taxes and deductions come out. And then net is the other term to use. And net, think of as that's the money that is left after the deductions come out. And the way I thought about that as a kid was net. If money sort of sifts through a net, what's left after being caught up in the net is my money to take home. And the net might be taxes and deductions. So think of gross, how gross it is, how much money you have to pay in taxes, and net is how much you end up after the net of deductions, how much you get to take home. So those are the two terms that's really important for you to get to know, gross and net. Write those terms down and the definitions because that will be on the exam. So that's income. Let's talk about a actual example of bad budgeting by someone that you all know. 11-time All-Star in the NBA is Allen Iverson. Who knows Allen Iverson? Of course, everyone knows Allen Iverson if you're a sports fan, right? So this guy was a tremendous athlete, had a tremendous career. He earned well over $154 million in his 15-year career. $154 million in 15 years. That's a lot of money. Yet, 5 years after retirement, he went broke. 5 years. During his peak, he was earning $750,000 from endorsements alone. So that's on top of the money he was getting from the team. He was earning $750,000 a year on endorsements alone. So he had a lot of money coming in. But he had a bad spending habit. He didn't have a budget that he was following. Budget, plan. He didn't have a spending plan in place. He spent roughly several $100,000 a month. Tremendous amount of money. $10,000 for entertainment, $10,000 for clothes every month. $125,000 on debts. A lot of money every single month. He wasn't really following a plan. So I'm going to take a pause for a second, and amongst your tables of three, have a quick conversation around why do you think he went broke after retirement, and what could you have done better? So we know that he spent a lot of money, so that's probably one of the reasons why he went broke. But importantly, what could you have done a little bit better with the $154 million that he had? Let's take 2 minutes, have a conversation amongst your tables, and I'll come back to you in 2 minutes. Great. Well, let's hear about what you would have done differently. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Okay, well, that's great. And what I'm hearing from all of you is that if he had a plan, or if you had a plan, you would have done it a little bit differently. Well, that's great. Let's talk about that plan. What did that plan look like? You talked at your tables about what you do differently. Tell me a little bit more detail around that. Great, because what I'm trying to get you to think about is how could you have spent that $154 million differently by putting a plan in place so that you only use a certain dollar amount of that money every month. whatever the plan is. So what do I mean by that? If you take a look at the slide here, you'll see it says total wealth, $154 million for Allen Iverson. And we're showing how a budget could have affected Allen Iverson's personal wealth. A lot better ending the story than the way it did. So out of $154 million, let's say he spends half the amount he spent on clothes this time. So that's $7 million cumulatively on clothes over 15 years. 7 instead of 14. And then let's say he spends half as much on entertainment than he did. That's still nearly $5 million in entertainment. And then let's say he spends only $8 million on cars instead of the 16 he spent. And he only had $50 million in debt instead of the $100 million in debt that he had regularly. So you'll see out of the $154 million, that leaves him with $87 million. $87 million. So that's a lot of money left over for Allen Iverson. So let me ask you the question. Let's say now you've got that $87 million left over after 10, 15 years. What would you do with the $87 million? Knowing what you know now about how a poor budget plan sunk this star, Allen Iverson. What would you do differently with that $87 million? What I'm trying to get you to think about is you might invest that money. Sure, you use some to live on and to have fun and to share with friends and family. Yep, I get it. Budgeting and planning is not about depriving yourself necessarily. It's more about a structured plan in place so that you've got a little bit left over for yourself when you need it. And in this case, in this plan that we just showed, you'd have $87 million left over, and somebody mentioned the word invest, right? And that's what we're trying to talk about here as part of a good budget plan is whatever's left over from your spending, invest that money. Save that money, let's say, in a bank. That's the simplest form of investing. You take your money, you go to a bank, and the bank pays you what? What does the bank pay you for putting money in the bank? Interest. Exactly. You remember that topic from our last week, interest. So if you take $87 million and you invest that money over time, you'll find that will generate a fairly decent return, let's say 5 to 7%. 5 to 7% return on $87 million over 15 years is a very significant sum of money that is now growing instead of shrinking, right? So you can see here that whether we were talking about big numbers for Allen Iverson or small numbers for you and I, the premise is still the same, right? It's have a plan. Have a spending plan in place. Have a budget in place so that you don't spend all your money too soon and then you're left with nothing later on, as Allen Iverson was. So we talked about one bad example, Allen Iverson. Let's talk about some good examples of how you can save your money, invest your money. Some real good examples that you know from your own experiences. One of them is Marshawn Lynch. Does anyone remember the name, the football player Marshawn Lynch? Of course, yes. Nickname is the Beast. He was in beast mode when he played football. He was on the Seattle Seahawks, one of the best running backs to ever play the game. He's also a spokesperson for Subway. Real interesting character. You see him also on Monday Night Football introductions. And Marshawn Lynch did it right. And what do I mean by doing it right? He did some of the very practices that you all talked about during your table talks. What do I mean by that? If you take a look at the slide here, the slide says Marshawn signed a $31 million deal with the Seattle Seahawks in 2012, which included a $6 million signing bonus and an average salary of about $7.5 million a year. Right? $7.5 million a year. So he retired in 2016 with career earnings of about $50 million and a net worth of about $50 million. Whoa, that's pretty impressive. he's known for spending very little money of his football earnings and chooses to live mostly off of the $2 to $3 million a year he earned in endorsement deals with Nike, Pepsi, and Skittles. So basically, what Marshawn Lynch did was he took the money that he earned from football, invested it, and chose to live his life off of the monies that he was earning from his endorsement deals, sort of his side jobs after football from Skittles and Pepsi. And he ended up having well more than enough to cover his life and also those for his kids and his kids' kids and his friends and family. Now, who in the room thinks Allen Iverson did it better than Marshawn Lynch? Right. Marshawn Lynch did it the right way because he had a what? He had a plan. He had a spending plan. He had a budget. All terms, different terms for the same premise, same idea, a budget, a plan. One other example to use is LeBron James. Who knows the name LeBron James? Yeah, of course. We all know LeBron James, right? Whether you're a basketball fan or not, LeBron James is iconic. And LeBron James is one of today's highest paid athletes with well over $100 million in earnings. However, he calls himself the cheapest player in the game. He calls himself the cheapest player in the game. He says, I'm not buying, his words, I'm not buying no apps. I still got Pandora with commercials. I love this guy. I love the way he thinks. I still got Pandora with commercials, he says. He's also planning for life after retirement. He co-founded a company called Uninterrupted, which is a digital media platform, and was an early investor in the earphones that we all walk around in, Beats earphones. He invested in that early on. That earned him $30 million in 2014 alone. So just like Marshawn, he had his basketball earnings and then he had his additional earnings from endorsements and investments. So comparing the Allen Iverson example to LeBron James, who in the room thinks Allen Iverson did it right versus LeBron James? Right. The common thread between LeBron and Marshawn Lynch is that they both had a what? A plan, a financial plan, a budget. Exactly. Okay. So let's talk about several examples of income. As you can see on the chart here, we'll take you through a simple example of what your income would look like over a year. Let's make up an income. Let's say that you're a bank teller and you've got a gross salary here of $50,000. So gross salary. Who can remind me what gross salary means? Right. It's the money before taxes are taken out, right? It's gross how much taxes are taken out. That's your gross income. And out of a monthly, right? You get $50,000 a year. Monthly, how much is $50,000 a year? You'll have to do some quick math in your heads because your phones are all the way in the pouches, right? It's about $4,100 a month. Okay, so you can see that on the chart here. $4,100 a month is your gross income. And then below that, we've got a list of all the taxes that you have to pay to the government before you get your net earnings. And why do you have to pay taxes? Let's reflect back on what we learned last week about the concept of taxes. Who can tell me why you have to pay taxes? Right. Taxes are the way that all of us have to pay for the things in society that we don't think about but necessarily need, like the police and the fire folks and stoplights at the intersection. Things like that we don't think about need to be paid somehow, and that's taxes. So you'll see here that one of the line items that's going to come out of your paycheck, every paycheck, is Social Security tax. Now, we won't go deep into what each one of these were, but conceptually, you understood from our last week's discussion what these were. Social Security, that's a savings account for when you retire, and then you could take that money back out. So you're paying Social Security tax, you're paying the Medicare tax, you're paying New York State tax or New Jersey tax, city tax, and county tax. So your total withholding is going to be roughly $987. So out of the $4,100 in gross income, roughly $900 of that is in taxes. So the remaining number is 4,100 minus roughly $1,000 is $3,100. What number is the 3,100? Is that gross or is that net? Exactly, it's net. That's the net amount after. Think about the visually. Imagine the net. The net is the taxes. That's its withholding. What comes out of the net is yours. So net taxes, net of taxes. You walk away every month with $3,100. Okay, so that's a quick summary on what income is. Let's pivot now and talk about the second topic, or the second term that we learned earlier, and that is expenses. Expenses, again, is expenses money coming in or money going out? Okay, why is it money going out? Because it's X. It's exiting our wallet, right? So exiting expenses. So there are several kinds of expenses to think about. One is fixed expenses. Who wants to take a shot about what fixed expense examples are? Great. Some examples I just heard are rent and telephone, as well as cable and savings. The second example is variable expenses. Who could tell me what some examples of variable expenses mean? Think of the word variable. What does variable mean? It varies month to month. What are some examples of variable expenses? Okay, utilities. How about what you got on your back? Clothes, right? How about what do you do every night or maybe once a weekend when you go out with your family to eat? Dining out. That's a variable expense, not something that you have to do. So because you don't have to do it, they're variable. They come and they go. The third example is periodic expense. Who can give me some examples of periodic expenses? These irregular expenses that don't occur every month and can be unpredictable. Who can give me some examples of that? Well, we just had summer vacation, so maybe summer vacation is a periodic expense. How about when you go to college? How about healthcare expenses, medical bills? Maybe a car needs repair. Those are periodic expenses. So these are all three examples of different kinds of expenses that you'll have to get to know and be aware of. We'll talk about those expenses more, but I want to introduce now the concept of wants versus needs. Wants versus needs. Your wants versus your needs. Let's take an example of a want. What do you think a want is as it relates to financial literacy and personal finance? What's a want? It's something that you would like to spend your money on, but isn't necessary. Okay, that's a definition. I suspect you should write that down because I suspect it'll be on the exam. The want is something that you would like to spend your money on, but is not necessary. And when you're thinking of a want, when you're about to go buy this thing or push the button to buy this thing on your app, you got to ask yourself, why do I want this? And how will my life be different because I'm buying it? Now, I know you might think that's a pretty heavy question to ask when you're pushing the button on, I don't know, a pair of shoes or something like that. But, you know, if you have lots of wants, you may not have enough money for the needs. Who can give me some examples of needs? Or give me an example of what a need is? Right, it's something that you must spend your money on, because it's necessary, right? So want is something that you would like to spend your money on, but is not necessary. And a need is something that you must spend your money on because it is necessary. Again, write that definition down because it will be on the exam. Who can give me the examples that we've got on the screen here and tell me if it's a want or is it a need? So the following words, is dining out a want or a need? Dining out. Dining out is a want. Why? Because you don't need to dine out. You can go to the supermarket and buy food and eat at home for a lot less money. That's right. So dining out is a want. How about your electric bill? It's more of a need, right? I mean, I guess you can not turn your lights on if you don't wish to, but that's not realistic. So you do need your electric bill. How about a book for classes? Is that a want or a need? A book is definitely a need, right? You need a book for class. We don't give you an option as a school to say you don't have to buy that book. You need it for class. How about brand new sneakers, rather? Is that a want or a need? So here's an example of something that could be a little bit of both, right? I mean, you need something for your sneakers, something for your feet to walk around in. So it could be a little bit of both, right? It could be a want and a need. So maybe a fancy pair of high-end sneakers is more of a want, whereas a basic sneaker like a Converse or something, perfectly good and looks good anyway, is a need. So you get the examples. How about this one for monthly rent? Is that a want or a need? Monthly rent. Right, monthly rent. It's a need. It's absolutely a need. You need to live somewhere, and that's going to be using your rent to get there. So we just talked about wants and needs. Let's talk about a rule that it's called the 50-30-20 rule, which can help you to think about how much of that monthly savings you should be saving for your different wants and needs. 50-30-20. Has anyone ever heard of the 50-30-20 rule? Okay. Well, it's been out there for a while. The basic idea is that 50% of your net income, 50% of your take-home money should go to must-have expenses, needs type of expenses. So that's housing, that's groceries, utilities, transportation. Whereas 30% should go towards wants. Wants. Things like your cable TV or eating out or some of the other items that we talked about, right? So 50% needs, 30% wants, then you have 20% left over. What do you think the 20% is for? Think about what Marshawn Lynch and LeBron James did with their money that was left over. What did they do? They invested it, right? They invested it. So 50% goes to needs, 30% goes to wants, 20% goes to savings. And I'm sharing that information with you, this idea, this rule, 50-30-20 rule, for several reasons. One is it's going to be on the exam. Second is it's real easy to remember, right? 50% of your money goes to needs, 30% goes to wants, 20% goes to savings. It's easy to remember. And third is it's a pretty effective plan. It's a pretty good way to start. Now, as you get older, as you get more money, of course you can tweak that number. It doesn't have to be 50, it could be 52, it could be 55, but it's someplace for you to start, right? So I want you to remember that, the 50-30-20 rule, because it's going to be on your exam. All right, so next step during this class is going to be to help you to create your own budget. And I've given each one of you a piece of paper that shows a budget template that you can use to fill in. And what we'll do is we'll talk about how to fill that in and how to create your own budget. And why do you want to create your budget? Because you want to determine what your monthly income is going to be so you're going to use the net versus gross. You're going to need to know that. You're going to add up the total cost of your needs and subtract it from your income. The remainder of that is going to be for savings, like we talked about. Remember the 50-30-20 rule? And then the balance of that could be allocated towards your wants. So that's going to be how to create a budget. Figure out how much you're going to be earning. And we can use the example of the bank teller that earns $50,000 a year, gross, right? And then we're going to total up your needs expenses, your wants expenses, and your savings expenses. So if you'll take a look at the chart here up on the page, you want to account for every dollar that you possibly can. And you'll see that the chart shows a complete budget has your gross income, it shows your taxes, your savings, your wants, and your needs. Simple budget. It's an easy place to start. So let's do that. And one thing before we get there is for homework, I'm going to have you take a look at budgeting apps. Now we're going to do it shortly in your groups through paper and pen, because I want you to get the actual feel for writing these numbers down. But as you know, everything's automated nowadays, so you can go online and find some really powerful and free apps to be able to use to do budgeting for you. And one of your homework assignments is going to be to identify one or two of those apps and what's the one or so thing that you really like to do as part of those. What's the one or two features of those apps that really look interesting to you and that's powerful to you. So what can a budgeting app do for you? It can automatically track and categorize your spending. I have one myself, so if I go to the store and buy, again, sneakers, let's say, I come home and it's already, the cost has already hit my app as $50, $60 on Hoka sneakers. So it automatically classifies that as a want purchase for under clothing. It also helps you to set a budget. Right? These budgeting apps help you to set a budget and then help you to set an alert for unusual spending. So if, let's say, my 50-30-20 rule that I use for myself, if let's say one month I go way over on my wants, it'll send me an alert to say, hey, Ken, you're going over, spending a little bit hot, slow down a little bit. So that's what budgeting apps can do. And what you want to do when thinking about these apps is to connect your bank account, to connect your credit cards, and things like that, so you can have all your information all in one place. Several apps you're going to look at. One of them is the Empower app. One is Credit Karma. And those are both free. That's Empower and Credit Karma. So we'll talk more about this at the end, but basically the class homework is going to be looking at those two apps to think, what's the one feature on those apps that you really think is powerful and resonates with you? So one feature in Credit Karma or the Empower app that's useful for you. All right, let's talk about creating a budget. We're going to do this together. We're going to do this in groups. You're a 3-person group. You're all grouped together for a reason. And that is the way that you'll talk amongst yourselves to come up with some answers as we go through this process. Time out. Darleen, I have them all set up in individual groups, 3-person groups based on their skills. So students that need a little extra help are grouped together. Students that are a little bit more advanced are grouped together, so on and so forth, so that I'm able to spend some time with each one of them and give them the support that they need. Okay, we're coming back to the class now. So to help you create a budget, let's talk about it in let's give you some backstory here. Let's give you an imaginary story that you can use to build your budget. Let's imagine that you are recently promoted to be a head teller at a bank that you worked for the last 2 years, and you want to create a budget that will allow you to achieve your goal. This is your goal now with your budget of watching your favorite band play live from the VIP section. That's your goal, is you want to have enough money to be able to pay for ticket to see your favorite band play in the VIP section. So let me give you some facts that you can see on the screen here. And they're also in your handout on your desk. Fact number 1, the band will be in New York City in 4 months, and the tickets will be $400 a piece. Okay, so you've got 4 months to save $400. Imagine that you're living in an apartment with 3 roommates because you have to pay your share of what? Every month you have to pay what to live in an apartment, right? Rent. And you also have to pay for what? The utilities, the electric, right? Okay. So you've got to pay for utilities. You have a trip planned with your roommates to Boston next month. You're going to see a Broadway play. You're often forgetting about your lunch, so you know you have to buy some lunch while you're out in school, while you're out at work. And you also know, as you can see on the chart here, that it's important to pay yourself first. So you need to be paying yourself, saving money for yourself in your own account as part of your monthly steps, right? So your budget is $50,000 gross. The facts are what we just talked about: 4 months to save $400. So let's have you talk amongst yourselves now and think, okay, how can you use your chart to fill in the blanks and properly spend the money that you've been allocated through your salary, and spend it wisely using the 50-30-20 rule. Okay, let's everyone take 10 minutes to talk amongst yourselves. And the first 7 minutes of that is talk amongst yourselves. After 7 minutes, I'll give you a flag to say, everyone pass your budget to the next person so that they can look at your work as well. Okay, so amongst your group, take a look at the chart and you'll see the different expenses of categories of different expenses that you're going to have to spend that $50,000 on. Talk amongst your 3-person group, and as you have questions, raise your hand and I'm happy to come over and help you. Okay, so take your expenses, plug them into the budget chart that I gave you with the dollar amounts. Take your best shot. I'll be walking around to help you all out. Okay, let's go. Time out. Darleen and I will be walking around to spend some time, particularly with the kids most highly challenged, the slower learners. I'll spend time with them first to make sure that they're coming along well. That's homogeneous grouping, as taught in the subject matter that we learned. And I will be voluntarily, or I will be proactively stepping into each group along the way to make sure that they're progressing the way I need them to progress. So that's what I will be doing over the next 10 minutes, but I'm going to accelerate that so I can get back to this process. Okay, everyone, 3-minute warning. Please, everyone, pass around your chart to the person next to you so that they can see what you did, the work that you did, and the categories that they made, that you made. They can check your work for you, and you could check their work for them. And it gives you an opportunity to say, why'd you put something here? Why'd you put it there? Okay, take those 3 minutes. Go ahead and do that. I'll be walking around. Okay, time's up. So you had the list of monthly expenses. Let's take some time and go line by line in your monthly budget chart. Let's fill them in. Let's see what it looks like. Let's take every expense and slot it into the right category where it belongs to be. And this is exactly what you could be doing and should be doing at home with your own expenses. Okay, first line, it says income at the top of the line. What's your monthly income, assuming $50,000 a year? How do you get to your monthly income? Shout it out. How do you think you get from $50,000 to monthly income? Exactly. Divide it by 12. 12 months in a year, take 50,000 divided by 12, gets you to a gross monthly income of about $3,100. Now again, is that net or is that gross? Is that net or gross? Right, exactly. So now that you've got your income, money coming in, what's the other category that you have to look for? Exits, right, expenses, right, expenses. So the first line is fixed expenses. What do you think goes under fixed expenses out of the list that we have just shown you, out of this list, what goes under fixed expenses? Exactly. Medical. Okay, medical, $75. Rent. How much is that? $1,000, right? Utilities. Which categories, which expenses should be filed under utilities? How about electric? Yep. How about cell phones? Yeah, cell phones. I can see that. We also have the category of transportation. What should be listed under that category? MetroCard for $112. Membership. What should go into membership? Cable TV, gym. Yep. That's a membership. That's $45 and $80 respectively. Now, the ones we just talked about, those expenses, what types of expenses are they? Are they variable? Are they fixed? Or are they periodic? Right, they're fixed. Why are they fixed? They're fixed, exactly. They're fixed because they have to happen every month. They're needs. They have to happen. So that's your fixed. Variable expenses. Variable expenses could be like going out to lunch, $125. Clothing. How about clothing? What do we have there for spend? $175, exactly. Entertainment. What goes under entertainment? Broadway, ride. Musical, $200. Bowling, $200. And then the last category we have, as you can see here, is periodic expenses. So under travel, we talked about a trip going to Boston, right? So Boston, how much is Boston? $200. That would go on that line. And your savings. Don't forget to pay yourself first. Someone remind me, what does that mean to pay yourself first? Right. Prioritize paying yourself, much like you would paying an electric bill. Every month you should pay yourself a fixed amount of money. Paying yourself means taking it away out of the pocket to spend and putting it into a bank account where you can save it. Okay, so we just went through your income, which is about $3,100 a month, and all the different expenses, periodic, fixed, and variable. And that comes out to around $2,400 rather, sorry. So $3,100 income minus $2,400 expenses comes up with how much is left over? Roughly, right? $749. Call it $750 is left over. So the question is, do you have a surplus or a deficit now? Surplus or a deficit in your monthly budget? Who could tell me what the definition of both is? Surplus and deficit, right? So if you have $700 and some odd dollars left, $750 left, is that a surplus or a deficit? Exactly, it's a surplus. And then the question we had when we started this exercise is, do you have enough money to meet your goal? And what was your goal? Right, to have $400 to spend on a concert. Do you have that $400 to spend on the concert? Yes, you do. Congratulations, it worked. The budget worked. Yay, that's great. So you have that $400. So the question then is, we could just wrap it up now and keep it simple, but life isn't that simple, right? Unfortunately, life has a way of throwing curveballs at you. So let's throw a curveball. Let's say, for example, you have an unexpected $400 expense. Another $400 comes out of nowhere. It's a credit card bill, or it's, I don't know, medical need. All right, what are you going to do? Okay. Might you have to cut back on some other spending? Maybe cut back on bowling, or maybe not go to the Boston trip? Yeah. Right? Because you only have a certain amount of money coming in every month. So if you had $700 some odd income left over after all your expenses, and a surprise $400 expense comes up, yeah, you've got enough. Now, if the expense was $800, you wouldn't have enough, right? So what do you think you'll have to do if a big expense like $800 comes up and you only have $700? What are you going to do? Give me some examples. Raise your hand. Right, you're going to have to sacrifice something else. And maybe that something else is it going to be a need or a want that you're going to sacrifice? All right, it'll be a want. You can't sacrifice a need. You can't sacrifice your electric bill. You can't sacrifice your rent because you'll get thrown out in the street by the landlord. But maybe you sacrifice Boston. Maybe you don't go to Boston this month. Maybe you go next month. Or maybe instead of going bowling, you hang out with your friends at home and watch Netflix, which you're also paying for, but a lot less than bowling. So you see the point. It's a trade-off. It's either you buy this or you buy that. This or that. It's never both. It's not this and that. You have to make those decisions based on your values. And that's going to be something that you'll develop those values over time. Your parents certainly have those. So maybe that's a conversation to have with them about their needs, their wants. All right. Let's finish with a game. So we have the room divided up into groups, 3-person groups. And each one of those groups can raise their hand as a group to answer the questions around budgeting terms. That's what this game is going to be, is budgeting terms. We're going to ask each one of you, each group, to raise your hand as a group and answer this question. And whichever team gets the most correct answers doesn't have to do next week's homework assignment. All right? That's the benefit. Okay, so term number 1 is income. Everyone raise your hands. Group, raise your hand. First hand up gets it. First correct answer. Okay, table 1. Income. Definition? Correct. Congratulations. That's 1 point for team number 1. Second one is gross pay. Gross pay. Oh, I saw that group first. Give us the definition of gross pay. Okay. Net pay. What's your net pay? What does net mean? Okay. Net, the amount of money you actually have left over after standard deductions, taxes, and things like that, right? Next is fixed expenses. Definition for fixed expenses. Yours was first. Excellent. Fixed expenses. Fixed expenses, the amount of money each month that are standard, fixed, doesn't change. Think, give us an example of fixed expense. Rent, exactly. Variable expense. Variable expense, the amount of money that can change on a certain expense month to month. Who can give us an example of that? Cell phones, right? Every month, cell phone bill changes. Or maybe electric bill changes every month. Okay. Periodic expenses. How about a want? Defining a want. Great. Want is something that you would like to spend your money on, but it's not necessary, right? Like to spend your money on, but it's not necessary. How about a need? Show of hands. Need. Table 6 gets the need. The need is something that you must have because it is necessary. Again, think rent or medical insurance, things like that. And then the last one, probably the most important one, show of hands. Who could tell me the 50-30-20 rule? Excellent. Table 4, 50% goes to needs, 30 goes to wants, 20 goes to savings. Excellent. Excellent. Table 3 is the table that's getting out of homework for next week. Okay, so at the beginning of today's session, I showed you this slide of the various objectives. The objectives were, we're going to describe what a budget is. Right? We did that. We described why a budget is helpful as a financial planning tool. We did that. Preparing your own budget using the template, the paper template that I provided you. You did that. Congratulations, you did your very first budget. You can change that budget, you can tweak it, do whatever you feel like you need to do to it. Start over again if you'd like to, but at least you now have a template of a basic budget and how it can be used. Fourth thing you did is you understood the definition of several basic financial terms, where I gave you, where we played this game. And as part of a flash quiz, I'm going to give you exit cards with a couple of extra terms on there. And what I would like you to do with these exit cards is fill out the definition of the term, drop it on my desk before you leave, make sure your name is on there and the date, and I will be giving you credit appropriately. It's only 3 terms. You should be able to nail all 3 of those down in your exit cards that I'll be handing out in a moment. And then your homework assignment is going to be for next week, have everyone take a look at the Empower app and the Credit Karma app to see what one feature of those apps attracts you and makes it really interesting for you to use. Okay, just one feature. And that's to keep you all honest, to show that you actually looked at it. Okay, so I want that for the next class. And I would also suggest that you can have a conversation with your folks, right? Or your relative, or whoever your guardian is, about their own budget. Now, you won't want to get too personal, and maybe they don't want to tell you exactly what's going on with how much exactly they're earning, but you can have the conversation around, hey, how do you think about needs versus wants, mom and dad, or guardian, or uncle, or aunt, or whomever's your significant guardian in your life. Have that conversation and ask them. You can also tell them the things that you learned in class today and maybe show them how you understand what a budget is and why it's important. And they'll probably be very impressed by that, that you're being thoughtful about it and actually asking them. So let's stop there because we're getting to the end. Any last questions as we're wrapping up? Okay, so in our remaining couple of minutes together, just a quick reminder of classroom procedures. Once a month, remember, we spend time on classroom procedures just to remind us what the rules are and what the procedures are. So let's everyone hear me out while you're starting to put your bags and your things together for the next period. We've got 4 rules in this class, right? 4 rules. One is that we're respectful. The second one is that we're ready, right? We're ready to learn. We're always ready to learn. Third is we're always safe, right? Safe meaning we'll always remember the rules, the school rules about our safety and the safety of our fellow students, our staff, and teachers. And then the fourth is, which you were today, everyone was engaged. Everyone was engaged. Everyone really leaned into this, had some fun with it, shared your ideas and your feedback, and you helped everybody out. So congratulations to all of you. You all did a wonderful job today of following the 4 rules. So that's it. With that said, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the day. If you have any questions, stick around after class, and I'm happy to help you out. Okay, that's it. Thanks. That's it, Darlene. Hope that was useful. Hope that was effective. Please let me know your feedback. I always value your opinion. Thanks so much.